Younger workers are less willing to trade off pay and more time for family or personal time compared to those above 55. Now, such differences in view on the future work between younger and older Singaporeans have been revealed in a survey by the Institute of Policy Studies. Those between 21 and 34 also value learning and career advancements more than job security, whereas having autonomy is more crucial for older workers. Two-thirds of those surveyed also think that work in their current roles would change significantly in the coming years. But older workers, as well as those with less education, are less open to such changes and might need help to adapt.
And for more on this survey, Dr. Laurel Teo, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies, joins us now. She's also co-author of this report. Dr. Teo, we just heard from my colleague there, different mindsets reacting differently to expected change. Two-thirds expecting our workplace to change a great deal in the near future. What kind of changes can we expect?
Right, you mean at the workplace? Okay,
Yes.
so one of the things we keep hearing about is the rise of technology changes. So the rise of AI, for example, means that a lot of tasks are going to be automated, and the nature of your tasks and your relevance in the job is also going to be changing. So, example, in finance, robo-advisors are now able to recommend investment portfolio allocations for different types of investor groups or profiles. So they're able to do mass customization. So where does that leave portfolio managers? So you need to develop more bespoke or individualized plans for specific clients with specific needs. Now, still using finance as an example, so when it comes to the rise of green or sustainability agenda, we know that the green sector is one of the green economy is one of the rising sectors. So if you're in financial reporting, for example, you will find that on top of the traditional financial statements, you'll have to prepare sustainability reports, and also apart from credit risks, you also have to take into consideration ESG risk factors. So that means expanding your skill sets. And outside of job-specific tasks, even general work skills will have to be updated. For example, one of the panelists on the first day of our Singapore Perspective conference, Dr. Ong Chen Hui for IMDA, highlighted that when we apply for jobs, our resumes are likely to be first screened by applicant tracking systems. Now, these tracking systems zoom in on resumes that best match the job description and filter out the rest. So as a job applicant on the market, if you're not familiar with the technology, you need to understand how these new technologies work and configure your resume in the most advantageous ways for these tools. Otherwise, you won't even stand a chance of getting an interview. So the rate of technological growth increases exponentially, and we can only expect more changes at more frequent rates in future.
Dr. Teo, when you break it down, why are there differences in attitudes between younger and older workers about that need to reskill and adapt to changes?
Well, we see a big difference in those aged 55 and above and the younger workers. And it could be because this older group feels that they're close to retirement age, and hence the future changes may not affect them so much. And it could also be simply because the longer you've been in a job, the more you're used to doing things in a certain way. You're very good and very skilled at what you do now. You've invested a lot in getting the experience that you have now. So to have to start completely afresh and learn a new skill or even a job from scratch, starting on a blank slate, that's very daunting.
Oh, Dr. Teo, another key finding from your report was on perceptions of the change in social status. So, for example, the 21 to 34 age group said they had seen their social status change much less, or rather improve in that way, compared to the other two groups, so those above 55 and those aged 35 to 54. Of course, one obvious reason is that at a younger age, you are less likely to have accumulated enough money and seniority to have actually seen your social status change. But your report points to perhaps slightly more disturbing factors beyond the fact that they're not so old. There could be factors that suggest that in Singapore, our social mobility is slowing.
Well, yeah, so we can't say for certain because the report is not looking at the reasons for this. But one thing, as you mentioned rightly, so one of the very simple, obvious reasons you've had less time to accumulate your wealth. A second reason is, well, as the economy matures, while the older generation have grown up at a at a time when I guess the pace of economic growth was a lot faster. So now that the economy is mature, and in the past few years we've had a few setbacks with the financial crisis and with COVID, so people who sort of came to the workforce during this period, they will have less of a chance to accumulate wealth and advance their careers. But it doesn't mean that there are no opportunities. So there's still good opportunities out there. Yeah.
Now, who are these stakeholders, perhaps, that could help a reluctant group prepare for workplace disruptions to come, and how can they help?
Okay, well, we in our survey we found that there are two main groups of people who may need more help. One is the less educated group. So when you look at education levels, when you compare education levels, there is a statistical significance difference between those with secondary and below secondary level education and those with above secondary education. For example, those diploma holders and with post-secondary qualification and with degree holders and so on. So the level of awareness, there's a big gap in the level of awareness that job changes will come. There's also a big gap in terms of the openness in the attitude in accepting changes and in picking up new skills. So there's so and then there's also, like we mentioned earlier, the older group, the older workers as well. So stakeholders, I think a lot more hands need to be on board to help them. Probably likely one thing would be public agencies. A lot of people will look to the government, and I think the government is already looking very closely at this. We heard from Education Minister Chan Chun Sing on the first day of the Singapore Perspective Conference that a lot more effort will be put into reviewing and improving adult learning options. And again today, DPM Lawrence Wong also mentioned this in his speech at our conference today, that adult learning, again, there'll be a lot more effort put into this. So we know that adult learning cannot be a one size fits all. So different people learn at different pace and they have different learning requirement needs. So there will be, I believe our policymakers recognize the need and are looking into this very seriously. And another group of stakeholders would probably be employers. One of our other speakers on one of our panels, Professor Irene from NUS, has mentioned this, that a lot of times employers, most of the employee resources are poured into training for what we call high performers. But it is precisely the group of lower performers that need more help. So we need, perhaps employers need to think about how can we rebalance the allocation of resources.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Dr. Laurel Teo, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies. Thank you.